It is my honor and privilege this morning to introduce to you this morning Phil Johndrow, CSM retired, United States Army. If you met him this week, he probably introduced himself as Phil Johndrow, veteran, I was in the Army. The reality of it is, Phil received several awards for valor in his time that he served in Iraq, actually 42 months after 33 years of service in the Army. Phil led the single largest battle group under one flag in the history of the military in the United States. What's interesting about Phil is he studied for and earned his degrees while he was actually deployed in the battlefield, both bachelor's and master's. And that's where he developed his love and his passion for education. He has a wife, 2 children, and 5 grandchildren, who I think they wonder at times whether they saw more of him when he was deployed or now that he's working with us at Trident University, because Phil did earn his degrees from Trident and has a real passion for education. I kid Phil that his conversation with people ought to go something along the lines of, don't tell me you don't have time to get an education, guess what I was doing when I got mine? And I think you'll get a little bit of a sense of that from Phil today. So without further ado, I give you Phil Johndrow. Welcome, sir. Thank you.
We always start something with the Army, whenever we say hua, you know, all this cool stuff. So sometimes when I do hua or something, when someone says, I try to get away from that a little bit, because hua can mean so many different things. So if I say something along those lines, it's just because it's really, there's certain things that are kind of hard to break or, you know, take down a little bit. So, but I'll work on that. I've been working on that for the last 2 years now. Now, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here, because I know you have a busy schedule. I know this is the last day. I know it's early in the morning. I was in the gym at 4:30 this morning, but that's kind of how I roll. You know, so, so breakfast was right on time for me, but I know it's kind of early for 7 and then 8 to do this and everything else. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here today. First of all, what I want to talk about is the battlefield and kind of set the stage a little bit. When I was in Iraq, during what they call Operation New Way Forward, or the Baghdad Surge, it was the largest single formation ever assembled under one division headquarters. Normally a division has about 20,000 soldiers. Well, during this time, the brigades that plussed us up, we had over 100,000 soldiers in our formation. So it was a phenomenal task of what we had to deal with. And then you look at the dangers that we had in Iraq. You had over 300 attacks a day, and you traveled on the roads, and you had the constant threat of what you all know about IEDs, improvised explosive devices, on the road. You had constant rocket attacks, mortar attacks, small ambush attacks, all these different attacks as you were going around. So you have to put yourself in the mindset of when I was trying to take classes, when I decided to go back to school, this is what's going on around you. And you're losing soldiers virtually every day. For 4 months, all I ever did between the time of 7 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock at night was go to a memorial somewhere in Iraq. I lost 500 soldiers when I was there, my last tour for the 15 months I was there. To this day, it hurts. It hurts. And when I go and visit the memorial down at Fort Hood, Brett was with me, he knows how emotional I get because it's out of the same vein out of the Vietnam Memorial. And whenever I see a veteran, I always thank them for what they did, because we could not be the force we are today, following the footsteps of those that started before us. And that's why we're such a great force we are today. But that kind of tells you about the danger that we had up against us. But I wanted to go back to school because for several reasons. One was I wanted to develop my critical thinking skills, because I knew at the level that I was at that I wasn't just a sergeant that was out there saying, hey, make sure the rocks are painted and the fire lights are turned off and the cigarette butts are picked up. I knew as a sergeant that I could think at the tactical, operational, and strategical level. So I wanted to develop my critical thinking skills, because I was the one person with the command that was on the ground every day with the soldiers, going on patrol, 18 hours a day, finding out what's going on. And for the first time in my life when I started taking homework, I look forward to doing it, because I knew at the end of the day, when I came back, that everything went all right, or as right as it could be in a combat situation, and when I was taking classes that night. I also wanted to help myself as I prepared to make a transition, because I knew I wasn't going to be a soldier forever. I was going to make a transition, and one of the things that we don't do a very good job for as veterans is we don't do a very good job of preparing ourselves when we make that transition. We plan on everything we do. We plan on everything we do. Every organization, you plan to go outside the wire, you plan to do this, we do combat checks, we do pre-combat checks, all these checks and all these lists that we have. When we make the transition to the civilian world, we don't do as good a job as planning for ourselves, because we're so focused on what we're doing right now and take care of soldiers. But I wanted to let them know you can take care of yourself and take care of your soldiers. And I wanted to set the example for my soldiers, because I would never have them do anything that I would not do myself, or something I would not do myself, and say, okay, how busy are you? I'm taking classes. So it kind of set the stage for them as far as what I was going to be able to do and what I want to do over that time. And lastly, it gave me a chance to pull myself from the rigors of combat, decompress, look at something out of the box from a different perspective, and come back and look at this problem later on and say, wow, I got the solution to that problem. I can figure this out. So it gave me a chance to kind of get in zen and decompress. I worked out, but I needed something for my mind as opposed to working out. I got the physical part, but I needed the mental part. So for those reasons is why I decided going to school was important. Because other people thought, like, you don't have enough going on in your life right now? You want to go to school too? The battlefield. I'm going to talk about two problems or issues that we dealt with. And just as you do in your organization or a CLO, you deal with complex problems every day. And you use your critical thinking skills. Just for instance, trying to keep the top type of talent in your formation or trying to attract people to your organization under a limited budget. Things of that nature, things that you have. You've got problems right now you're dealing with that you're thinking of while you're in here. So you have issues and concerns that you deal with. Here's one of the issues that I had. And what it was soldiers were getting killed on the battlefield, what we call the improvised explosive device. And what would happen is they became more complex. They became more creative. The enemy adapted to what we were doing. So what they would do is right here, they would have, go back one. They would have a beam. And what would happen is that the vehicle went by and crossed the beam, it would trigger a device, it would hit the vehicle right in this area here, causing catastrophic damage. And what they developed after this was what they call the EFP, explosive form projectile, that actually had a molten charge that went right through the vehicle and destroyed everything inside the vehicle. And I knew as a leader, I was given the responsibility to take care of our national treasure, our sons and daughters. So I knew we had to think quick. We had to think quick about how to defeat this. So I got together with the leadership and said, okay, let's put our critical thinking hat on. Let's figure this out. There's a way we can defeat this. And I thought in my mind, when I was a kid, I remember on a train, there was like a cow catcher out there. And the cow catcher kind of went out there and knocked the cow off the track. I didn't really know how it worked, but I remember seeing it on TV all the time. So I said, what if we had something we could put out there to cut the beam, prematurely made the device ignite, and then take off the front of the vehicle, or just take off that device in the front itself, saving the people sitting inside the vehicle. Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Okay, now how do we build this? So I got to get the mechanical guys in there and say, okay, how do we build this thing? So I get all the mechanics together and say, hey, Sergeant, we can put a pole out here, we can put something out here. I said, what do we put out there? What do we have in abundance in theater? Because you can't write home to Home Depot and say, hey, we need a couple thousand of these, because we got to solve this problem right now. We can't wait. So we have what we call engineer stakes, about a metal stake about 3 foot high. And we had plenty of ammo boxes for machine gun ammo. So the mechanic said, hey, we can weld an ammo box on the end of this stake and put it on the end of the vehicle, and that way you put it out there. We tested it, it worked perfectly. So now we've got something out in front of the vehicle where we can cut the beam right here, and it destroys either the front of the vehicle or destroy it all, thus saving the soldiers in the crew compartment. And so now there's another problem. How do we produce them? All right, get every ammo can, every engineer stake we got on the camp, get it over here. Get it there now. And then you got to prioritize. How do we produce them? 24-hour shifts, 3 shifts, 8-hour shifts. Everybody, all hands on deck, we put these things on there. How do we prioritize it? Nobody goes outside the wire unless they have one of these on their vehicle. We hot seat crews, as a crew get out, another crew get in, until we can produce them for everybody. And of course, this thing starts getting out inside the theater. Everybody wants one. The brigade, the division, the corps. I mean, you're talking about the amount of soldiers that are over there in Iraq. This became a big thing. And so we had to put them on all these different vehicles and get them out there. But it was the critical thinking skills that we devised to save lives, to be able to do this and take care of it. And it really helped me as far as I started putting together, after this, I put together a critical thinking team. And what this team was designed for was I sat on this team and we took all the problems and issues that we had that dealt with soldiers out there to think about what we could do to go ahead and adversity effects that we were having out there as far as trying to, it's a chess game, it's a 3-dimensional chess game once you get these out there. And once we get these on the road, well now you got to keep it a secret. Because the locals go, oh, what's that? Ah, it's a barometric device, it's measuring the dust conditions in Iraq. Because we knew once the locals found out, well, the insurgents are going to find out. And once they find out, they're going to try and counter you any way they can. So you have to look at all the different things you have to do. To this day, since 2007, 34,000 of these have been built. 34,000. They've saved thousands of lives. Some company made millions of dollars off this. Wasn't us. That's not why we did it. We did it to save lives. We look at it today and say, wow, somebody made a lot of money off that. But that's okay. That's okay. That's okay because they could mass produce and get out there as quick as possible. We couldn't do that. All we wanted to do is save our brother and sister that was out there as far as in harm's way. And then I had another more of a personal issue that I had over there. And these two young ladies here, this is what I knew is initially why and because. Now these two girls in the upper left-hand corner were interpreters. We could not do what we did every day outside Iraq without them. I couldn't talk the language, so they could talk to the locals, they could talk to the people, and you had to have somebody trustworthy, because if they said something different, you don't know the translation they could say, and it could completely change around what they had. You're dealing with Shias, you're dealing with Sunnis, you're dealing with Kurds. They're different tribes. So you got to really trust them. And plus, they would give me, these two young ladies would give me the down, what was really going on out there. Some people would say, oh, it's going fine, getting better. They said, no, it ain't. Here's what's going on. And when I first met them, I was actually looking for somebody else. And I asked them, well, where's this person? And one kept on saying why, one kept on saying because, and there were two sisters that were going back and forth, all of a sudden I was out of the conversation. Hey, I'm just trying to find somebody. Can I cut in? So then finally, so I called what and why and what because. And whenever I went on the camp, it was why and because, and I would see them, and they were always happy. And if they took the same risks as we did, and they always were uplifted and upbeat. And I would tell you, these girls were extremely brave. I've met, these women here are braver than a lot of men I've met over there. I mean, they would come to work every day. They already tried to kill them once. They've already killed several people. This is my second tour over there when I first met them. Coming back my third tour, a lot of the people I knew the first tour, they weren't alive anymore. They were murdered. Some of the people would leave camp, and then you wouldn't see them again. Because they were followed home by the insurgents, they were executed. That's what was going on over there. These girls still came to work, had to take a different route home, different route to work, tell their family that they worked for the Ministry of Defense, that they're in the ministry, they didn't even work for the United States Army, because they were fearful for their life. But they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to do something for their country. They wanted to serve in a different capacity. And it really made me think, you know what? You don't have to wear a uniform to be a patriot. You can be a patriot in whatever capacity you can as far as you support troops out there. And it really made me think about what they did out there. Well, then I got to know more and more, and then it became Afra and Lena, because now they became more personal to me. And they were like what I call my Iraqi daughters over there. And they would always complain about this or complain about that, but you know, just like your children would, you know, about this. And as long as they were complaining about something new, you're like, okay, this is good, good day, good day. Because there's so many other things going out there. But what they did over there is phenomenal. The second time they tried to kill him, things changed. They drove home, car flipped, caught on fire. The insurgents thought they were dead, drove off, and they got out of the vehicle. One broke her leg, one burned her back, but they were able to get away. I knew at that moment then when that happened, I had to do something. I had to think of a way to get them out of Iraq. I didn't know how I'd do it. I still got 8 months left on my tour. But I knew I had to find a way to do it. So I started, you know, asking people, asking the staff, Googling, trying to figure it out, and I finally found there was a program. There was a program for those that were in harm's way where you could go ahead and do the vetting process and get them out of the country and get them back to the States, and then they could work on their green card. And as much as they were an important part of our organization, I knew I had to do something. And so I sat down and I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We'll start doing the paperwork. Well, the paperwork is background checks, fingerprints, you know, vetting process, all these different things they had to do. And at the time, the country was only letting 50 people in. 50 people out of the whole country of Iraq. Well, 60 Minutes did a documentary on it, wanted to know why they're only doing 50, and they raised to 500. So when they raised to 500, I knew this was my opportunity to get something done. Well, their paperwork was in the midstream somewhere in the wickets. And it was at the brigade level, and I actually had to go to the division level and get signed by a general officer. So I took it upon myself and said, I'm going to get the paperwork. So I went and got the paperwork, and I took it to the general officer, knocked on his desk. Sir, you got to sign this. And he looks at me, he goes, what is it? I said, well, it's some paperwork for offering Lena to get out of the country. And he knew about him by then because I had told him about him. And he looked at me and said one thing. He said, do you trust him? I said, with my life. He didn't ask me another question. He signed the paperwork. When he looked in my eyes, I was never going to let anybody hurt them girls again. I'm sorry. It's always tough getting through that part. But I was determined to do something about it. I couldn't control my soldiers' lives, but I could control theirs. I could do something about it, and I was going to do something about it, and I was going to do something about it right now. So I was able to get their paperwork done, pushed through. General signed it, and I was able to get them to Turkey. They couldn't take their clothes with them. They just had to go to Turkey, as is. So then the next problem is they said, you know, you're their sponsor. I said, well, yeah, I signed the paperwork. No, you're responsible for the next year. Well, I'm in Iraq for another 8 months. I'm not sure how we're going to work this out. So they said, well, you're responsible for a place to live, a place to stay, get a job, everything else. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So I called up my mom. Mom, you got some guests coming home for dinner? I know you don't know anything about this. I know I've heard some things in your lap before, but this is kind of a big one, but it's very important to me. And my mom realized how important it was to me. She goes, absolutely, absolutely. And I didn't know how the community would accept them. Because some people are like, okay, you're in Iraq, you're fighting Iraqi people, these are Iraqi girls, aren't they the enemy? But if they're not, they're our friends or allies, because most of the people in Iraq are really good people. And they only want the same thing for our children like you want for yours. Peace and prosperity. It's the insurgents you got to worry about. So then I get them to where they're going to go to my mom's. Well, then they go and they get stuck in Paris for 3 days. Not the kind of Paris that we see, but Paris where French are interrogating, trying to find out who they are, what's going on, what's happening. So my mom's in the airport for 3 days going back and forth saying, hey, they didn't show up again today. I don't know where they're at. I don't know where they're at either. But you know, the girls were resilient. They got there. And they went to Montana. Montana from Iraq. 125 degrees. We got hotter and hottest. One temperature. Took place, or at least they got 2 in Montana. Winter and the 4th of July. So at least they got 2 seasons out of it. But you know what? They flourished. They sent me pictures of them with snowballs and everything else, and with the community. The community wrapped their arms around them and took them in. And I was so proud of them. And then they had to find jobs. Well, I get a call out of nowhere from a Vietnam veteran that says, you know what? I was with the 101st over in Vietnam, and I didn't like the way we left Vietnam. We left a lot of good people over there when we left. And I never felt good about it. And I give you a commitment from one sort to another. I will take care of these girls and I will find them jobs. I was like, well, that's great. Thank you very much, sir. I never met him before in my life. I found out he worked for the government, for the governor for the Department of Labor. He found them jobs. In fact, they worked for him when they first got over there. So I was like, all these people in the community started taking these girls in and started helping them through their journey. Now, they had trials and tribulations and challenges. Their mother died of breast cancer while they were in the States. It was sad for them. I mean, we cried on the phone about it, but they couldn't go back. It was just too dangerous. But I mean, in the other ways, they just flourished and they were able to do it. And as you see in this picture here, well, after about 4 years, you fast forward, they called me up on the phone. I was in the Pentagon going to see that same general. He was a 3-star at the time. And the older one called me and said, I passed my test. I'm going to swear to be an American citizen. I want you to be there. Unbelievable. So I went and told General Campbell, hey, the girls just passed the test. He's like, that's great. You got all these 3-star generals and 2-star generals waiting, and I walk right on in. John, what's going on? So he wrote him a letter right there, handwrote him a letter to how proud he was. That, you know, I said, you signed that paperwork, what made a difference in our life. If you didn't sign it, this wouldn't have gone any further. And so he signed the paperwork, and you know, he signed the letter for them to go there. And they both passed the test. And I was like, okay, next critical thinking skill, how do I get there? I have to be there for this. Well, I just happened to be, when the date was, up there at the director's meeting at the university, and the university was gracious enough to let me leave a day or 2 early, fly out there and be there with them. And I will tell you, it was the biggest get-together I had ever seen. And the senators, the governor and the mayor and all them said it was the biggest gathering they ever had for an immigration ceremony. And when we stood up, we said the Pledge of Allegiance together, and they waved those flags, I was so proud of it. Like a proud papa in the room, like, oh, this is so great. You know, it was beaming from ear to ear. They had the local papers, were doing, you know, articles on them. They were doing television interviews. And you know what the older one officer said? Why is this such a big thing? I'm just an Iraqi girl. The ones you should be talking to are the soldiers that are over there fighting for this country and making a difference. Those are the ones you should be talking to, not me. Still, and it's so humble. You know what I said? But you got to tell your story. People have to understand what you're about, what you've done, the journey you've made to get here. You're what America's all about. The melting pot. So, you know, they start telling a little bit more of the story. And here, this last picture is with the judge. They usually don't let cameras in the federal courthouse. But this was such an overwhelming response from the community. The judge made a concession that where we could go ahead and bring news equipment and you know, video cameras and everything else into the federal courthouse. Because this became such a big community event. I'm surprised they have a parade over there. You know, it became such a community event for these young ladies. And they flourish to this day. Offer's still working for the Department of Labor. Lena is working part-time at Macy's, and she's taking her college, and she's working on her accounting degree. And they both want to come to California. They are bent on coming to California. They keep telling me, we want to go to California. It's like, and I said, yes, the weather is really nice. Yes, it is really beautiful. But they have got, one day, that's their dream. Their dream is to get to California one day. But, I mean, and they tell me to this day, thank you for saving our lives. I said, you know what? Thank you for saving mine. Because, you know, they saved my life too. Because the trials and tribulations when I was in Iraq, you still don't know how it's going to turn out. You want something good of what you've done. You want to be able to see and touch something, a difference that you made in somebody's life. They're it for me. I helped 4 other families after them get out of Iraq. Because then I knew the drill. I knew exactly what I had to do to get it done. And I said, sir, here I am again. All right, so who's it for this time? But there was the ones that were really in dire danger. It was a little easier with them because a lot of them had families in Michigan or California or Texas. These girls here had nobody anywhere. But now they've got a big, extensive family in the state of Montana and all around them. So. And just talking a little bit about, you know, your critical thinking skills in my battlefield. You know, as I talked about a chess match between you and the enemy, you know, as I talked earlier about the rhino, well, the enemy did find out about it. They did find out that we had this device, so they put a 2-second delay on the IR beam. So when it hit the beam, 2 seconds later, it would ignite and it was right back into the crew compartment. So, okay, all right, now what do? Okay, now we extend it out a little bit further. We put it out another foot, still back to the front. They put a 3-second delay on it. You know? Okay, now what do we do? So we ended up doing 4 different scenarios. One where you didn't have the rhino on at all. One where you had it about a foot in front. The second one you had 2 foot in front. The last one you had 3 foot in front. And we would change it every day of what we were going to do. We didn't let anybody know to do it. Had nothing printed because you didn't know who could see what or pick up something or look in trash or whatever. But, you know, the unit's responsibility was to change it every day of what they were going to do. Stay on top of it. The critical thinking skills to stay ahead. You know, we found out we were reactive when we went over to Iraq initially. They would do something, we would react to it, they would do something, we said, well, we got to be proactive, not reactive. We've got to get in their decision-making cycle. We got to throw them off balance, not have them throw us off balance. So we could use our critical thinking skills to get back in there. Be the first out there with the IO campaign. Get the news out there right away. Because they always felt like the first person that got the news out there was the most accurate report. And that wasn't always true. And of course, us as news, we'd have to vet it, we'd have to run it through IO, PAO, and everybody else. By the time we got there, the event's over, and they already think this is the way the event happened. And it's not true at all. So we had to kind of do battle drills where if something happened, we already preconceived some of the things that could have happened. We had the event already rolled up, and if it happened, we adjusted a little bit, already had it vetted and sent it out there. So we were the first ones out there with the IO campaign to be able to get things done. Continue assessing, get inside your adversary's mind. The worst thing you can do, I found out, is underestimate your enemy. You feel like, well, they can't read, they can't write. We're the United States Army. We're the greatest, greatest army in the world. Nothing could be further from the truth. They might not have been able to read and write, but they definitely knew how to. They knew how to do different things. They were very cunning. They were able to put things together. Whoever thought, here we are talking about the Cold War, the evil horde, and all the technology we have. A simple device like an IED worked. They started off on a washing machine timer. Washing machine timer, 30-minute time, and they would get it set up, and by the time you went through, they'd be back drinking, chai tea. And then you go back and you try and find it, trying to see what's going on. Not knowing who the enemy is. When something explodes, people run. Well, there's people run all different directions. You don't know who's who. They throw the AK. You don't know who's who out there. So you got to kind of consistently think of what's going on out there. You know, you remember as a kid you play Hogan's Alley, trying to find out who the bad person is, who the good person is. It's kind of like that. You got to sit there and think of who the right person is out there. The battlefield demands an agile, balanced, and critical thinker. The sharpest and the most important weapon that we had on the battlefield, we know every day, is our soldier. And you have to sharpen your skills, your critical thinking skills, just as you sharpen your bayonet. You got to keep on the edge. You got to be thinking every day. I'm always reading or looking at something or trying to find out better ways to think of a situation. Because I've always had a saying that we're smarter than the average bear, and that's why we're here. We got to figure this out. All the easy decisions have already been made. Now it's up to us to make the hard decisions. Just as you do in your organization. You've got all kinds of things that you look at. You develop teams, you do critical thinking skills, you're trying to break down silos, trying to break down cubicles, do the collaborative approach. That's the same thing that I was doing amongst all my agencies within my organization, trying to get everybody to work together as a team to get things and solve what we had to solve. My classroom. This is actually me coming back from patrol after I came back and getting ready to do homework. So, you know, 18-hour-a-day patrols. And I was looking for something to decompress, but I had already been Phi Theta Kappa when I got my associate's degree. That's the International Honor Society for two-year colleges. I had a 4.0 GPA. So I knew I had good memorization skills, but I wasn't looking for that. I had done that. I had been to every non-commissioned officer education school in the United States Army, and I had been on the honor grad or the commandant's list on every one of them. I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't looking for memorization skills because I would read it, study it, memorize it, test it, pass it, flush it, repeat. And I couldn't pick up anything that I was, from what I did the first class, 3 weeks later said, remember that class? No. Oh yeah, I remember taking it. I remember I passed it. Yeah, I got the grade. Yeah, okay, moving on. But it wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for something more robust than that. So I was looking for a robust learning model that challenged me. Something that would give me a complex problem, a real world problem, where I could take it. I could look it up, do my research, come up with a solution, defend my solution. And then that I retained. I was able to retain that kind of thing because it helped me with everyday things I was doing. And I was able to use some of the things that I used to say, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that. When they were doing the BRAC for the Combined Arms Center at Fort Leavenworth, they were looking at, efficiencies and, all these other things. And the three-star general I was working for looked at me and said, Sergeant Major, you got that. Because he knew I had a master's degree in business. You got that. And I felt good for me as a non-commissioned officer to have a three-star general say, Sergeant Major, you got that one. Knowing that he could depend on me, that I could go ahead and do something besides, okay, the fire lights, the cigarette butts, and everything else. Because I said, you're missing a critical thinker on your battlefield if you don't do that. Because the non-commissioned officer today is so much above the non-commissioned officer. Now, don't get me wrong, the non-commissioned officer we had back in that day was precisely what we needed. But we got to continue to make ourselves better, just as you do your organization. It's talent management. You continue to make your organization better and do what you have to do to be the best organization you can possibly be. So that's what I was looking for. I also need something that worked me for flexibility. I had to have flexibility. I always thought I had to be a brick and mortar classroom. I had to look at somebody, they had to look at me, I had to see their body language, I had to figure it out. But then I found out I couldn't do it that way. I couldn't go get a proctor. I couldn't do this. I didn't have the way of doing that. So I had to find a university that was flexible, that could work with me, where I could take class when I had time, at midnight, 5 o'clock on Sunday morning. Whenever I had a chance to do it. That's when it was important to me, that I could do it. And then I had to set the example, just as you do for your employees. Oh, I don't have time to do it. Okay, 18 hours a day, 100,000 soldiers. Are you more busy than I am? No. Okay, let me see your plan. Show it to me. Set the example. I'm doing it. If I'm doing it, they say, you know what, you're right, Sergeant. You can do it. I know I can do it. I can fit it in there. Okay, all right. So, and then my soldiers started taking classes. Because I want to make sure they're prepared not only for the United States Army when they make the transition. They're prepared when they get ready to go into corporate America. Because your military experience enhances you only if you have the education to back it up. That's what they're looking for. If you have the education to back it up, the skills you have as a leader, a manager, a logistician, they're phenomenal. But you just need the education to go ahead and back it up. And you want to be able to use the education where you can actually use it, not the memorization stuff. the soldier you deal with it, or the military member that comes out, it's the 19, 20, 25-year-old person is much different than what you deal with on the outside world. Once they've been in the structure of the military and they understand it, they come out a whole lot different than they went in. And they're much more mature, they're much more focused, they're much more about getting the job done. And they're not so much task-oriented, they're about mission-focused. They train to standard, not to time. And they're about getting things done as quickly as they can. And the leadership they've had leadership tested in some of the most harshest environments in the world. We have a route called Irish, and I got a t-shirt, it's called, NASCAR Irish or something like that, because it used to be put the pedal to the metal. Because it used to be this mindset, if you're going to get me, you got to get a beat on me. So if I slam on the gas, you're trying to get a beat on me. But you quickly found out that's not going to work, because when the ID goes off and it hits your vehicle, you're just going to flip and you're going to be going a little bit faster than before instead of a hollow to control. So what you want to do is you want to go slower and see it. But there's a problem there. Everything you see, because you hear about soldiers, everything they see. When I see trash on the road or you see something, okay, is that trash on the road? Is that trash can just laid over? Or is that an ID inside the trash can? Is that a dead dog, or is there an ID underneath it? I mean, everything can be an ID if you look at it. So you have to sit there and you got to use your skills to be able to decipher, the different things that you see out there. And on Route Irish, this route was used by congressmen and senators to go from Buyout, which is the airport, to the international zone where the embassy was at. This 3-mile strip was the most traveled route, and the insurgents knew that. If you wanted to make an impact, attack somebody on that road. And the young men and women that protected that road, just think of the responsibility that they had on them. If something happened on that road to a congressman, a senator, or a VIP, it went straight to the Pentagon, straight to the White House, straight to the president. That's how important it was, as far as what they did, and the tremendous responsibility we put them on that road to be able to do that. And they stood up to the challenge. They stood up to the challenge, they were able to do it every day out there. Now there was mishaps and things that happened because, of course, they wanted to be able to make a splash. But we were able to deter everything that was out there as far as what we did. Teamwork oriented and dedicated. Hey, we tell you there's no I in team. And the word team, there's no I in there. It's about us. It's about us making us better. It's about raising our team. Doing the best we can together. Rowing together. Not, oh, they're in this department, they're in that department. No, together. How do we make ourselves better together? You're in the infantry, you're in the army, you're in the cavalry. No, I can't do what I want. You're in the Air Force, you're in the Navy. Well, I can't do what I can without the Air Force up there. Give me air cover. I can't do what I could without the Navy. We had electronic warfare officers over there because we had lost the art, which jammed the IED devices. We couldn't do what we did without them. The Marine Corps, I had their intelligence analysts out there helping me find out where the bad people were. You go into town and kick down 10 doors and piss off 10 families. You want to go in and kick down the right door and get the right person. That's why you collaborate with the right people and collaborate with the people that you have inside there. They want to make a difference and make continued greatness. And what they want to do is they want to be a part of something larger than themselves. They want to be a part of your organization to make it better. They're very much goal-oriented as far as what you have to get done, and they're very focused on what it is to take that mission and make it happen. As a Chief Learning Operating Officer, when you look at veterans, you just don't hire them, you have to help transition them. Some of them, like myself, I spent 33 years in the military. That's all I've ever known. It's a transition. It's not an easy transition. I wore a uniform every day. Now, sometimes I wear a different type of uniform, but I wore a uniform every day. When I made the transition, it was like our animals. Okay, suit number 1 goes number 1 jacket, number 1 pants, number 1 shirt, number 1 tie. Okay, that's one set. Number 2 goes number 2, number 2, number 3, number 3. Because, I never did color coordination and all that and everything else. I'm still working at it, but I'm getting better. So you kind of work those different things that you got to work with, to be able to make it better. But it's things like that they, they need to understand. They need to understand. They need to develop the confidence. I had a conversation with Brett one day, and I was saying, I don't know a lot about the business world and the corporate world. He goes, you know what? Reflected to what you did in the military. You knew quite a bit about it. He was right. You just take the uniform off, you just start thinking about how you run things in the military. It's a little bit different. But I think there's what I call a hybrid leadership. I think there's very good things in the corporate world, very good things in the military world. If you brought them together, you could have what I call a hybrid leadership. It's one of those things that I think about when I pontificate. And you want to get accurate advice. You want to tell to the right people, because you've got veterans in your community, veterans in your organizations that can help make that transition. Because it is easy. Because as I told you before, we plan for everything that we do. But we don't plan very well for is making the transition. I know I could have done a better job planning. Writing resumes. Understanding that military jargon, it doesn't really transfer over. You know, I mean, you might know what ASAP means. You know, but the rest of it, it's like when I say something else, you're like, say what? You know? So you got to help them make that transition because it's not that easy. Like I told my Hoa, I've gotten better, but I'll still do it once in a while because it's just one of those things that you've just been doing for 30-something years. You do it. You know, somebody will jump back and say, whoa, wait, I was waiting for you to get in a karate stance or something. Like, whoa! What's that? You think, you know, like, hey, you know, hey, it's okay, I'm sorry. You know? So you want to be able to help them be able to make that transition, help those with great advice. I go up to Fort Leavenworth 3 times a year as a senior mentor. For the school of, and not the prison side, the other side. For the school of command preparation. I volunteer to go up there 3 times a year, and the university lets me do that, to be a senior mentor. Because for me, it's about giving back. It's about giving back to an organization that's given me everything I've ever had in life, and made me the success I am today. I've never forgotten where I came from. You know, I had food stamps, you know, when I grew up. But, you know, they gave back to me, and I want to give back to the military as much as I can. I want to help them. And I'm a coach. I coach active duty, doing 360 coach, and I also coach veterans as they make the transition. I help them get set up with a resume and everything else. I do the best I can. I mean, it's still a work in progress. But I do everything I can to help them make the transition. It's going to be okay. Because I feel like we owe it to our soldiers, sailor, airmen, and Marines. They know I've been successful in the military, but I owe it to them to be like this and be successful and make a transition into the civilian community and say, you can do it. You're going to be okay. Just get yourself in the right mindset. You might go out of your comfort zone, but that's okay. That's okay. That makes you better. That makes you more marketable. That makes you stronger. That makes you understand more that surrounds you. That's a good thing. Not a bad thing. But people just naturally don't like to get out of their comfort zone. But it's okay. I tell them it's all right. It'll be fine. And you want to make sure you partner with the right university, whatever fits in with your schedule, whatever your... I tell my soldiers, say, go to college. Go to a university. Go do something. I said, I don't care... Whatever you go, that's fine, but I want you to go get your education somewhere. Go and do it now. Because it's that important to them. And by them seeing me do it, they knew just how important it was. I went from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree in 4 years by taking 1 class at a time. 1 class at a time. I never took a break. I never took a knee. I never stopped. 1 class at a time. I had a 3.85 GPA on my bachelor and a 3.92 on my master's. While I was working for 2, 3, and 4-star generals and being deployed. Because it was that important to me. So I said, okay, if I can do it, you can do it. And they, Roger, okay. And I was proud of them. I didn't look at their homework and try and assess it and everything else. Come back and show me your grades, though. Just kind of want to get a, you know. I had one soldier that her husband was deployed, was a captain, and she had 2 children. And she got behind on her classes. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. From 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Thursday, you sit right at this desk and take classes. But sorry, man, I got to answer the phone. Forward them into my office. I got it. People call me, Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major, why you answer the phone? I really want to call Sergeant so-and-so. I said, well, you got me. What's the problem? Well, okay, all right, no, she's busy. You know? Because I was that important to me. I said, now get back, because you want to drop the classes. That ain't happening, we ain't doing it. Nope. You're going to continue your education. You're not going to stop. Because once you do that first excuse, you don't do it, or your employees tell you, I don't have time right now, I can't fit it in. When are you going to fit it in? There's always going to be something out there that's going to deter you from getting to do it. So just take that first step, take that leap, and start moving. And look forward. Keep looking forward. And then when you get there at the end, I'll be like, because I have people say, you're going to take a break. No, I'm not taking a break. I'm not taking a break. I deployed 3 different times and moved 3 different times while I was taking classes. And I did not miss a class. I went to Starbucks. I found out wherever I get a connectivity, wherever I could do it, I figured it out. I figured it out because I knew once I dropped the class and I didn't take it, I was never going to go back. Or I was going to put it off. And I had a focus in my mind. I was going to start and I was going to finish. And the last thing I'll tell you about was, you know, when I was in Iraq, you get all this mail when you're over there. And I had a crayon drawing that was sent to me from a girl, 3 years old, and, well, 3rd grader. And it was of a soldier kind of holding a flag. Kind of like, you know, you look at the 911 photo with the fireman. And it was just written in crayon, and what she wrote on there was so true, and it sticks to me this day. It said, if the good guys never stand up, the bad guys will win. I said, wow. You know, a girl 3rd grade is writing something like this. I said, that's amazing. So I hung it up on my thing, and I used to always look at that all the time and say, you know what, we're the good guys. It's not easy being a good guy. It was the hardest thing I ever did being a good guy. The first thing you want to do is when your soldiers get hurt, you say, we're trying to help these people. Why are they trying to hurt us? Well, let's go in there and take out the town. No, we can't do that. We got to get the right person. We got to get the town to work together. And it always made me think, we're the good guys. Hardest job we'll ever do. But we're the good guys. We have to decipher us from them. We're not like that. That's not what we do. It's tough being a good guy. And lastly, I want to thank you. I used to go in the airport all the time in my uniform and people would thank me for what I did. And I said, okay, thank me. Yeah, I want to thank you for being a soldier. I said, okay, well, I want to thank you because you're an American taxpayer. You pay me to do exactly what I want to do. I'm living the American dream. I am an American soldier. There's nothing more prouder in the world to do than do what I'm doing right now. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. And I told them that I want to thank you because you pay me to live the dream. And I know America's not perfect. I know we don't always get it right. But we did not become the greatest country in the world by accident. We earned it. We earned it by those that shed the blood and the tears before us. And because of good people in a room like you that support our military members that go in harm's way for us every day. We couldn't do it without you, without your support. Thank you. Now we're kind of open for questions. If anybody's got any questions or anything, then fire away. I told you, like you said, I ain't got no weapons. In fact, I'll turn this off. So I don't even have a laser pointer anymore. Anything you want to ask at all?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, sir.
I'm obviously not an American. I think you can notice that from my accent. But I would just say that I think you were not the only person to overcome with emotion during your talk. I'm quite sure that all of us also experience intense emotion. I think that's about it. What I found in your talk, and I understand that you're marketing towards American audiences to take veterans in and promote them, that I understand. That will not be for the business that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really appreciate in your talk, and I personally would want to engage you with, is the way in which you presented both the soft and the hard issues of leadership in that combination. I don't know if you guys also experienced that, but I'm famous for saying that a university is the last place where I would look for leadership development for my own people. Because from Harvard downwards, what you get in the leadership courses is basically how to become a cheerleader. And I've never seen a cheerleader ever becoming a real leader. And what I found in your talk is that, I mean, that's why we all have emotion. This is a real presentation of soft issues, but not as a fuzzy, political correct, cheerleading presentation of EQ and all that other fluffy stuff that never gets to the hard grit decisions. So I really appreciate that. I've heard something really fresh, and in a long time I haven't heard this kind of combination about leadership. And I think if more of the grander universities would integrate this kind of element in their leadership courses, it would serve our organizations much better. But I would like to engage with you on that level, and perhaps we can get you to come and speak to my organization. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. Yes, ma'am.
So in your experience, and wondering what you feel organizations can do to help make that transition for veterans. Are there one or two key things that you see organizations not doing that could be positioned to say this would really help?
Well, I think as I talk about, if you have some veterans in your organization that can help, because sometimes when you see veterans, they kind of mingle together, or they understand, or if they're doing something, like I was talking to somebody yesterday, we were talking about veterans from Iraq or Afghanistan, or whatever. When you see them at an organization or something, they kind of mingle together because they feel like they understand what they've been through or what they've done. But I think a fellow veteran or somebody that understands that, hey, look, I know you're going through a transition, I know I know there's some questions you're going to need to ask, because another thing that especially NCOs, they don't like to ask a lot of questions. They don't like not knowing what they're doing. They're used to knowing what they're doing. They're used to be given a mission and move out and do it. They're not used to, I got to ask questions. Oh, darn it, I'm used to being in charge and leading. So he'd say, hey, it's okay to ask questions. If there's anything you're confused about, we know there's going to be a learning curve to get on here, because the learning curve that they've been on is either you know it or somebody gets hurt. So the learning curve, okay, we can understand that. And someone might have post-traumatic stress. I've got post-traumatic stress. I've been diagnosed with it, but I know how to conceal it, and I know how to build resiliency through it. Because I always said I'm going to make myself stronger, not harder, not weaker because of it. Like those girls, that every time I tell that, I try to get myself through it. I can't do it. I can't do it every time. But because it's tough for me, because it's emotional, because I care. Like I said, I was a leader. It hurt me. When I went to every memorial, I have a program from every memorial I've ever been to, and they sit in a book in my house in a place of honor. Over 500. And I've got little notes I wrote on them. It hurts. It hurts. And that's why to this day I wear these wristbands, Wounded Warrior Project and Gold Star members. I will always be a part of them and help them in any way I can and do whatever I can. Because if you ever go to a hospital meet a Wounded Warrior, first thing I want to know is how do I get better? How do I get back? How do I get more formation? I've had wounded soldiers crying, tell me, I got to get back to my unit. They need me. They were shorthanded before I left. It's tough. It's tough. But helping to make that transition and knowing that there's going to be some things that they're going to have to learn and understand, and they're not going to be able to figure it out in the first day they're there. So being patient with them a little bit and let them know it's okay to ask questions. Yes, sir.
Sergeant Major, my name is Steve Stone with USAA, and thank you very much for your service to the nation. I appreciate that. There's two things that you talked about I think that really resonate with us. One is the whole aspect of encouraging education, because that's what we do as a profession. And you're right, you hear a lot of people that give a lot of reasons of why they can't do it. But if they focus more on how to do it as regard to what's preventing them from doing it, they will benefit overall. So I appreciate your passion around that. The second passion you have, I think, is in terms of supporting your fellow veterans. And we all have seen the numbers where it shows the unemployment rates for separated veterans is much higher on average than other people in those same age groups. So one of the things that we've done is we have several different programs, one that we call CAMIs to claims, so from camouflage to claims positions. And what we've determined is that hiring veterans as a cohort allows them to come through as a group, and then we pair them up with senior employees who have also served to help them in that transition. So that's been very successful for us. But now we're kind of looking at that next level of how do we engage the military member who's still in the service and position them through an academic institution of getting their credentials and their education, so that when they do separate, their position for employment within the private industry. So that, I think, is the next iteration for companies, is to really do more of those partnerships with the academic universities to create that pathway for the retiring military or separating military member to come into the workforce.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I applaud you for that. Sometimes it's hard to get them off that soldier thing, though, because I had my family member go up to me one day and say, and I had been in for 28 years. They said, "Dad, if you're not a soldier, who are you?" I was like, see, if you can't answer that question right away, you got some soul searching to do. And I was like, wow, it really made me think. I said, that's true, because that's all I've ever known, that's all I've ever done, and it's hard to look beyond that because you think you're going to wear the uniform forever and be a soldier forever. And I think we all kind of go through it a little bit and say, okay, but programs like that, it's like transitioning. I was talking to, I was watching a special with General Dempsey, and I know Martin Dempsey very well, about transition, about how we need to start helping veterans as they come in to think about transition when they first come in, as opposed to when they get ready to get out with 6 months with ACAP and TAP and other things. So if they think about when they first get in, if they stay in, that's fine, but if they don't, the transition is a little bit more seamless, a little bit more easier, than opposed to 6 months before you go out to, oh yeah, I gotta do a resume, I gotta go to ACAP, I gotta TAP, and try and do this thing at the last minute, because that's a lot of what we do. They build the airplane while they're flying. They're still focused on the formation that they're in, and you see them all the time. They'll work up to almost the day they retire. Or transition, nobody retires anymore. Just go look for another job, career, or way of life. Hopefully you get the way of life. So, it's great, sir. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I think, and I apologize for being late, I probably missed the beginning of this, but the one thing that just kind of resonates with me, and you've been in several of the sessions, several of you have been, is that there is a process, it's a badgification process that's out there that a couple of companies are trying to implement into training. And they're trying to push it into, right now they're at universities, they're trying to push it into corporations and get it embraced. But I think based on what you're saying right now, I mean, are these soldiers intimidated by the fact that it's a long way to a graduate degree? Is it possible that these badgifications, like Boy Scout badges, and I don't mean to undermine this by any means, but these types of smaller segments for them of achievement could be something that they would embrace, and also that corporations would embrace, because maybe they don't have a four-year degree person, but they've got somebody, as you're stating right now, these people have some true skills. If they had something that they could structure around that, these large corporations would merge them in with other people, so on and so forth, and mentoring. I'm just seeing, you know, maybe that's what I've been here for the past couple of days for, to see this. You know, maybe this is something you talk about offline.
I mean, it's about helping them any way we can as far as getting to the next level. You know, they're trying to do it with the military, with the Army, what they call an apprenticeship program, where you get credit for some of the things you do. And a lot of colleges are looking at where they give them credit for the training that they've got up until a certain time. Like I was able to obtain, I believe it was 88 hours towards my bachelor before I actually took it. So that's why I was able to, I think I needed 36 hours or something like that. So it made it achievable. And now I couldn't have do that unless the university was able to work with me to do that. Because if I knew, I said, oh, you've got to go, you know, take it this long, I'd be like, oh my goodness. But you know, it's like when you run a race. You know, if you ever run a mile or something, or you run a marathon, you don't think 26 miles. You think a little bit at a time, 1 mile at a time, 1 mile at a time. Or you look at it, if you run a mile, quarter mile at a time. You get to each one of those little things at a time. You know, as I tell you, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You know, you got to start somewhere. You know, so you just take those little chunks and continue working along and get to where you're going to get. And try and do both. And I think, you know, like as you were saying, trying to get them more in thinking about, you know, you're not going to be in the military forever. Eventually you are going to make a transition. So not only can you plan for promotions by working on your education or your military occupational skill while you're in, but also work parallel with when you make the transition, that as you move from here to here, it's more of an easier transition where you're more prepared for it as far as with your skill sets to make that transition. I think that gives you that build of confidence we can do a little easier.
If I could, to your point, our career services department works with a lot of veterans, and we do take it in small segments because the concept of transitioning as a whole process is daunting. But to your point, let's look at your resume, let's update that. Okay, now let's take a look at what that actually translates to, then what companies, and taking them through the phases removes that intimidation factor. The same is true of education and training when they get to a corporation. We work with a lot of corporations on how do you hire a veteran. And we walk them through the same process. How do you read a resume that's written in military jargon? And walk them through. To your point, I think, and I like your term, badgification, that makes sense. I think you're absolutely right. Remove the intimidation by making each step of the phase attainable.
Right, I mean, if you apply for a job, you know, it's going to say a requirement is a four-year degree. It's almost getting to be, you know, graduating from high school. So if these people are looking at this as that, it's never going to happen. It's going to take me forever to get there. But I have X, Y, Z in the interim. If that's openly embraced,
yes.
You know, I'm not talking about, you know, being a Florence Nightingale here by any means, but I worked for a large corporation for 38 years. And I'm obviously 20 of that in education. I think there's a real miss here.
There is. The other thing corporations are looking at now is articulating their internal training to college credit where it applies. And that way, as they're going through these small training sessions, they're actually getting credit toward their degree. And suddenly they look up one day and say, wow, I had 60 credits from my military experience, now I have 30 from this. I'm at 90 and I need 120. This is doable. So it's definitely a partnership between the veteran employee and the corporation.
Any other questions? Okay, well, the other good thing was I was able to get you done on time, and because the last 3 sessions I've been, they've gone over. So I told you, I'm trained to standard, not the time, so I was able to get you there. Now, if you ever, exchange business cards with anybody, have business cards if anybody wants one.
And if anyone would like a picture with the command sergeant major, we'd be happy to take it and send it out to you. You're welcome to put it in that little frame you had in your swag bag, as I heard it coined when you got here. So Phil will be around. We have someone with a camera. We're happy to take a shot and send it out to you if you'd like one. Thank
Okay.
you, guys.
I shaved extra close today. Thank you, sir. Okay, all right.
So, one thing that I want to emphasize is